Before we begin the lesson, please try these 3 problems using calculator and then check with the key. So please pause the video and try these 3 warm-ups and then check. I'll show you the answer key. Pause the video and try. Here are the answers. Please check your answers. Completing the squares, you just move this to the other side, and then you're going to add 36 because x minus 6 squared can give you this trinomial. So that will be the perfect square factor. And then because I add 36 here, and since I move this to the other side, I add 36 to this number, which gives me 11. So that will be radical 11 because I need to square root of each side, because in order to take this out and solve for x, opposite of square is square root. So if I do square root here, you do square root here. So square root 11 and plus 6, because the opposite of minus 6 is plus 6. So the answer is 6 plus minus square root of 11. So that's how you do completing the squares. So we're going to do simplifying radicals review. So let's do the simplifying radical. We actually did this last year in algebra. 180, you can do 290, 245, 315, 35, and 51. So you can pause the video and do this part. And then you don't have to use 290, you can use 18 and 10. But you need to circle the pairs, and then each pair you multiply to each other. So you get 6 as an answer, that's your whole number. And the leftovers is 5. So 5, the leftover goes inside the radicals. So let's try this big number. So for 1470, the factors, you just use 2 factors, is 2 and 735. That's a prime, so you stop here, you just factor this part. So 735 is 3, 245. And then 245 is 549. And then 49 is 7, 7, and then 7, 1. So here you have a pair of 7, 7. You put that in the front, and you have these 3 leftovers. You multiply the leftovers together. So 2 times 3 times 5 gives you radical 30. So leftover goes inside the radicals. This one, I want you to try it. And the answer is 10 radical 33. This one, if you have a square root, you cannot have a negative inside the square root. Cube root, yes, but not square root. So the answer is imaginary. Imaginary means you cannot solve it right now. You gotta use imaginary number, which you will learn next year. So let's do some more. This one is 12 radical 28. So first you're gonna simplify 28. That's 2 radical 7. And then once you simplify, you multiply 2 to 12, which is 24. So 24 radical 7. So this is the whole number. The whole number already was there. You're going to multiply to each other. So that's how you get 24. So you have a big number here. So if I do use calculator and simplify, I get 5, 5 as a pair, 11, 11 as a pair. So 5 times 11, that's going to be 55. And then you have a negative 3 already there. So you're going to do 55 times negative 3, which is negative 165. And then you have 7 as a leftover. So 7, you put it here. Right here, you have a plus minus sign. So on your answer, you're going to put plus minus sign. So what you're going to do is factor this big number. Use calculator. So 3, 1911, 6, 637, 7, 91, 7, 13, 13, 1. So 3 and 7 is pair. You circle pairs. You're going to multiply 3 times 7, which is 21. And then you already have 2 there. So you're going to do 21 times 2, which is 42. And then you have 13 times 1, which is 13 as a leftover. So leftover goes inside the radical. So right here you have different types of radical problems. So you're going to multiply 24 and 20, inside and inside, which is 480. And then you're going to factor this using factor tree. And then you have a 3 there. You just leave that there. And then you get 2, 240, 2, 120, 260, 230, 215, 35, and 5, 1. So you have pair. So you're going to multiply each pair, which is 4. 4 times 3, which was already there, is 12. And these leftovers, you multiply each other, that's 30. Because 2 times 3 is 6, 6 and 5 times 1 is 30. Over here, if you have parentheses square, that means you're going to do 4 radical 11 times 4 radical 11. 4 times 4 is 16. Radical 11 times radical 11 is just 11. If you multiply same thing, radical twice, it actually is 11. So if you put this in the calculator, radical 11 times radical 11 gives you positive 11. So you get rid of the radical sign. So you actually do 16 times 11, which is 176. Look at here. Negative 3 radical 2 times negative radical 2. That's how you do negative 3 radical 2 square. So negative 3 times negative is positive 9. Radical 2 times radical 2 is just 2. And if you put that on the calculator, just this part, radical 2 times radical 2, you get 2. So 9 times 2 is 18. So 18 is actually the answer. You can put these two in the calculator like this with parentheses. It's going to give you these answers too. But not this one. This one you have to simplify. If you get a decimal, then you have to actually do the factor tree. So no decimals, please. If you get decimals, you got to do the factor tree like this. Okay? So let's look at dividing radicals. You cannot have any radicals in the denominator. That is one absolute rule. Let me repeat. You cannot have any radicals on the bottom. So in order to get rid of it, you got to multiply this by this. Same thing. So multiply the top by radical 47, bottom by radical 47. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. You do equal. So in a radical, if you do radical 47 times radical 47 on the calculator, you get positive radical 47. So it actually, you get rid of the radical sign. And then up top is 3 radical 47. You just leave the top like that. Look here. You cannot have radical 28 or radical 49. If you have a big radical sign over the whole thing, it is same thing as having radical on top and radical on the bottom. So what you're going to do is, here, you're going to radical 49. So for this particular one, just square root of 49 is 7. So you don't really have to do all of this, because this is perfect square. You just have to simplify radical 28, which is 2 radical 7. So for this one, it's a perfect square, so you don't really have to do all of this. Just write 7. Let's look at this one. So here, you're going to do square root of 36. We're going to, so this one also just, if you look at this, this is, you just do square root of 36, square root of 100, you can just do it separately, which is 6 over 10, which is 3 over 5. So you don't really have to do this part. And then 56 and 64 right here, square root of 64, that's a perfect square, that's 8. So you can write 8, and then 56, you can actually simplify for that one. So that's radical 14 over 4. Let's take a look at these two actually. So you have radical 11, radical 13. You cannot have radical on the bottom. So multiply each side by, just divide this like this. Radical 11, rewrite it like this. Radical 11 over radical 13. Multiply each side by radical 13 like this. So this is same as this. And then multiply each side by radical 13 to get rid of this radical sign, which is 13. And then 11 times 13 is 143. So this is not simplified. You cannot simplify this. So just write radical 13. 143. So 11 times 13, you just multiply inside. That's radical 143. That's the answer. Over here, this means radical 23 over radical 2. And then multiply each side by this thing. Radical 2, radical 2. Then you get rid of the radical sign, because you cannot have a radical sign as a denominator, but you can have radical sign on the numerator. Numerator is okay, but denominator is not okay. That's undefined. So you can actually write 2, and then 23 times 2 is 46. And you can simplify this part, or as of now, right now, you can just leave it like that, okay? So let's take a look at this. You see, you cannot have a radical sign on the bottom, but it is okay to have radical sign on the top. So you're going to multiply each side by radical 3. So radical 3 times radical 3 is just positive 3. 14 times radical 3 is 14 radical 3. That's how you write that. And if this can be simplified right here, 14 over 3, then you do simplify like a regular fraction. But in this case, it's not. So just leave it this way. Here, that's a no-no. You got a radical 5 is no good. You cannot have a radical on the bottom, but you can have radical on the numerator. So you're going to multiply each side by radical 5. Radical 5, that will get rid of and write 5. You can put this in the calculator, it will give you 5. And then 3, write it again. 11 times 5, 55. You can only multiply inside. Those are like terms, so you just multiply. So you can just leave it like that. Okay? Take a look at next problem. Can I have a radical on the denominator? So multiply each side by radical 15. That get rid of 15. 8 radical 15 on the top. That is okay. You can have radical on the top. Here, multiply each side by radical 6. That's 6. 7 times 6 is 42. 12 radical 42. But 12 divided by 6 is 2. So remember, these are whole numbers. They are 12 over 6. These are whole numbers. So you divide 12 divided by 6, which is 2. So 2 radical 42 is good to go. Okay? So you need to write 2 here. 42 you can simplify and then redo it. But as of now, since we're just trying to do this part as a lesson, you can just leave it like that for now. So the next page, can you try these two by yourself? I want you to try them. Pause the video and then check with the key. Pause the video and try. Alright, did you try it? Let's check the answers. So we're going to multiply radical 7, radical 7. Whatever you multiply to the top, to the bottom. So this will be 7. 7 times 5 will be 35. So did you multiply by 5? And then the top is 12 radical 7. You just leave it that way. And these two cannot be canceled, like simplify. So that's the answer. For this one, I don't know what you did, but you can actually factor this out if you want. And then I get 6 radical 15. You don't have to. You can actually multiply by radical 60, 60 and simplify later. And then I just showing you another way. So I just factor in the bottom is 2 radical 15, but 2 times 3. 3 was already there. So I do 6 radical 15. And then 10. I multiply each side by radical 15. I got 90. And then because 15 times 6 is 90. And then top is 10 radical 15. I reduce this. So that's 1 over 9, which is 1 times radical 15 is 15. You don't have to do it this way, but if you get the same answer here, then it's good.